Minister. Ministerial statements. Now the good news. Minister.
On behalf of the Prime Minister, Mr Turnbull, I table ministerial statements on national security and on the 50th anniversary of the 1967 referendum and the 25th anniversary of the Mabo High Court decision. I would like to start by paying my respects to the Ngunnawal people, the traditional owners of the land on which we meet. I'd also like to acknowledge their elders, both past and present. Today I rise on behalf of the government in this place to speak about National Reconciliation Week and the 2 anniversaries that were marked during this week's celebrations. National Reconciliation Week this year marked the 50th anniversary of the 1967 referendum and the 25th anniversary of the Mabo decision, 2 important events in the history of Indigenous Australia, but also in the story of our nation. These are stories of great change for our nation, but just as importantly, they are stories of great Australians. And it is fitting that the Parliament, both here today and a couple of weeks ago, pause and acknowledge their story and their contribution to the nation. The Prime Minister in that other place spoke about the importance of these anniversaries that stand as a highly significant chapter of our nation's recent history. The first was the 50th anniversary of the 1967 referendum. On the 27th of May 1967, Australians walked together and voted for change in a referendum that received unprecedented support, enabling the Commonwealth to enact laws relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and for our first Australians to be counted along with other Australians. The second was the 25th anniversary of the Mabo High Court decision, where on the 3rd of June 1992, Australia for the first time rejected the notion of terra nullius, that is, land belonging to no one. This High Court decision was the successful conclusion to years of fighting headed up by Eddie Koiki Mabo and his fellow plaintiffs for what was always known by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, that the land and sea belonged to them and that they belonged to the land and the sea. The Prime Minister's statement acknowledged the 2 anniversaries and thanked those outstanding leaders involved for their enduring spirit and for striving for change that bettered the nation. And it was a great privilege that at that statement, the surviving campaigners of the 1967 referendum, plaintiffs to the Mabo High Court decision and their families filled the floors and the seats in the galleries in that other place. I was fortunate to meet campaigners and plaintiffs at a luncheon I had in honour of hosting at Old Parliament House. There with my friend and colleague Senator Dodson, we spoke and recognised the contribution of these leaders. To be in the room with so many inspiring and determined individuals, each with a story of struggle and success, that should be taught in every school to every student. At this event, we also launched the commemorative Australian Post stamp, as well as the 50-cent coin that was beautifully designed by the daughter of Eddie Koiki Mabo, Benita Marie Mabo. These stamps and coins now circulate around the nation, building awareness of these historic events. And I couldn't be more pleased in knowing that Australia Post procured the work of the talented Indigenous designer Rachel Sara of Indigenous creative agency Galimba in the creation of its anniversary postage stamp. As these postage stamps and coins fall into the hands of younger generations, so does Australia's future. And it is with this eye to the future, the Prime Minister proudly announced in his statement of the government support for the next generation of Indigenous leaders with a $138 million Indigenous education package. To be matched with philanthropic support, the government is supporting Indigenous students to stand as our nation's leaders for the next 50 years. This education package will provide mentoring, scholarships and build Australia's future professionals in key fields including our STEM workforce. This includes organisations such as Role Models and Leaders Australia, the Australian Indigenous Mentoring Experience, the Stronger Smarter Institute, the Star Foundation, Madala Limited and the Australian Indigenous Education Foundation, amongst others. These organisations are delivering outcomes and through this package will deliver the highest calibre Indigenous leaders to take our country's next steps. The stories of the 1967 campaigners and Mabo decision plaintiffs inform our nature's future. With a history in mind and an eye to our future, we remember those who fought so hard, and we celebrate in the future that their efforts have provided. The government has supported local grassroots activities honouring the 50th anniversary of the 1967 referendum and the 25th anniversary of the Mabo decision through a grants round open to all local councils to work in partnership with local Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander organisations and tailor community activities. Many of these community events are featured in local newspapers right across Australia. Grants of $5,000 saw communities across the country come together, walk together in memory of these anniversaries and in unison towards reconciliation. On the 25th of May this year, I was very pleased to join with the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, along with thousands of our fellow citizens, in the long walk to the G that brings Australians together on a walk for reconciliation ahead of the AFL's Dream Time at the G Indigenous round match. And on the 3rd of June, it was again my pleasure to join with the families of Eddie Coltrane Mabo and plaintiffs Father Dave Passy, Sam Passy, James Rice and Ms Salee in the celebrations that took place on Mare Island. You could feel the pride of the community honouring its elders. The Coalition Government was pleased to unveil its support for a graveside restoration of Mr Eddie Kokai Mabo with restoration work for the gravesite of other plaintiffs to follow shortly. On this same day, Mabo Day, the Townsville and Brisbane communities celebrated together in 2 festivals, raising further awareness about the significance of the efforts of the Mabo plaintiffs. The government was pleased to support these anniversary celebrations. The nation sat up and noticed the celebrations that were happening across Australia. People like Dulcie Flower and Dr Barry Piddock, who dedicated their lives to these challenges and used whatever resources they had to fight for what was right. The 1967 referendum's overwhelming yes vote is a testament to the hard work of these individuals involved. And the Native Title Act was a major step in recasting the relationship between Indigenous and other Australians, recognising past injustices and setting the scene for a more equitable future. Since then, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's rights and interest in land has been formally recognised for about 40% of Australia's landmass. As Koiki Mabo said, "What is on the land and in the sea belongs to me and my people." But the struggle for the recognition of sea country has been just as hard as the original battle for native title. Sea country should be treated the same as land country, and the opportunities to manage and economically benefit from your rights over water must now be a priority. Which is why the Coalition Government announced at this year's Native Title Conference that we are investing in $20 million to support Indigenous people make use of their rights to sea country. And today, the nation celebrates its shared history and looks to a future of reconciliation and respect. The Prime Minister said it best when he eloquently stated in his statement that I'm tabling here today, "For time out of mind for more than 50,000 years, your people and your culture have shaped and been shaped by, cared for and been cared by, defined and been defined by this land, our land, Australia. Your culture, our culture, is old and new, as dynamic as it is connected. Now, if it's up to us together and united to draw from the wisdom and the example of those we honour today, and so inspired bring new heights and brighter blooms to the tree of reconciliation which protects and enriches us all." Madam Acting Deputy President, I'm pleased today to table the Prime Minister's speech honouring the campaigners of the 1967 referendum and plaintiffs of the Mabo High Court decision. We acknowledge these anniversaries and the contribution of those involved and continue to commit our efforts to deliver better outcomes for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians.
Thank you, Minister.